So this happened about 8 months ago, and I'm still getting messages from people asking if the video is real. Trust me, it is. And honestly, I'd do it again in a heartbeat. Let me back up and give you the whole story, because the 15-minute clip that went viral doesn't even scratch the surface of how satisfying this actually was. I'm Maya Chen, 26, and up until recently I was a senior AI developer at Nexus Analytics in Seattle. You know those companies that promised to revolutionize business intelligence through machine learning? Yeah, that was us. Fancy glass offices, kombucha on tap, the whole Silicon Valley wannabe vibe, except we were in the Pacific Northwest and everyone wore flannel instead of hoodies. My boss was this guy named Derek Manning. Picture the most generic tech bro you can imagine, then add 20 pounds, subtract any actual coding ability, and give him a Harvard MBA that he mentions approximately every 12 minutes. Derek had this thing where he'd lean back in his $3,000 ergonomic chair and say stuff like "I'm more of a big picture guy" whenever anyone asked him to explain how something actually worked. The thing is, Derek was really, really good at taking credit. Like, Olympic-level good. I'd spend weeks building some complex neural network or debugging a machine learning pipeline, and Derek would swoop in for the client presentation with his PowerPoint slides and his practiced hand gestures, talking about our breakthrough methodology and the innovative approach we've developed. For 2 years, I told myself this was just how corporate America worked. Pay your dues, keep your head down, eventually you get recognized. Except eventually never seemed to come, and Derek kept getting promoted while I stayed exactly where I was. But the algorithm? That was different. That was personal. Let me get technical for a second, because this matters. I was working on what I called the phantom algorithm, basically a neural network that could predict market anomalies by analyzing social media sentiment, news patterns, and trading volumes simultaneously. It wasn't just another machine learning model. This thing could spot market manipulation, predict flash crashes, identify insider trading patterns. It was genuinely revolutionary. I'd been working on it during lunch breaks, evenings, weekends. Completely on my own time, using my own equipment. I even bought a second-hand server rack and set it up in my apartment because I needed the processing power and didn't want to use company resources. My electricity bill was insane, but this algorithm was my baby. The breakthrough came on a Tuesday night in March. I'd been stuck on this data correlation problem for weeks, and suddenly everything just clicked. The model wasn't just working, it was working beautifully. In backtesting, it was predicting market anomalies with 94% accuracy. 94%. Do you know what hedge funds would pay for that kind of accuracy? I was so excited I could barely sleep. I came into work the next morning practically vibrating with caffeine and enthusiasm, and I made the biggest mistake of my career. I told Derek about it. That's fantastic, Maya, he said, doing that thing where he steeples his fingers like he's some kind of business guru. This could be huge for the company. Why don't you put together a presentation for the board meeting next month? I should have known right then. Derek never got excited about technical achievements unless he could see a way to monetize them. But I was young and stupid and thought this might finally be my moment to shine. The next few weeks were a blur of late nights and code reviews. Derek kept asking for more details, more documentation, more explanations of how everything worked. He said it was for strategic planning purposes, and that he needed to understand the technical architecture to properly position it to the board. Looking back, I realize he was basically making me write a step-by-step guide for stealing my own work. The board presentation was scheduled for a Thursday. On Tuesday, Derek called me into his office with this weird expression on his face, like he was trying to look sympathetic but was actually kind of excited. Maya, I've got some bad news. The board decided they want someone with more senior experience to present the algorithm. You understand, right? It's a big account, lots of money on the table. They need to see a VP-level person up there. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. But Derek, it's my algorithm. I built it from scratch. Who knows it better than? Look, you'll still get credit, obviously. Your name will be in the technical documentation. But presentation-wise, I think it's better if I handle this one. Don't worry, I'll make sure everyone knows about your contributions. He was lying through his teeth, and we both knew it. But what was I supposed to do? Storm out? Quit on the spot? I had student loans and rent and a sick mom who needed help with medical bills. I needed this job, and Derek knew it. So I smiled and nodded and said, of course, whatever's best for the company. And then I went home and rage ate an entire pint of Ben & Jerry's while plotting his demise. Here's where things get interesting. My best friend Zoe works in IT at Nexus, and she has access to basically everything. She's one of those people who's been there forever, knows where all the bodies are buried, and has admin privileges that management forgot to revoke because she fixed their email server that one time in 2019. The Friday after Derek's presentation, which apparently went amazingly well, according to the company-wide email about our breakthrough AI innovation, Zoe came over with Thai food and wine and a very interesting piece of information. So, she said, settling onto my couch with her pad thai, I was doing routine server maintenance today and noticed something weird in the presentation files. She pulled out her laptop and showed me a folder labeled Manning, Board Presentation, Confidential. Inside were dozens of files, my documentation, my code comments, my test results, even screenshots from my personal development environment. But every single reference to my name had been scrubbed and replaced with Derek's. The presentation slides were particularly infuriating. Derek had taken my technical diagrams, my performance charts, my carefully crafted explanations, and just put his name on them. There was even a slide titled Derek Manning's Phantom Algorithm, a revolutionary approach to market prediction. Derek Manning's algorithm. Derek fucking Manning's algorithm. There's more, Zoe said grimly. Check the metadata on these files. She was right. The original creation dates were all there, showing that Derek had copied my files just 3 days before the presentation. He hadn't even bothered to properly cover his tracks. But here's the kicker. Remember how I mentioned I'd been working on this on my own time, with my own equipment? That meant I owned the intellectual property. Not Nexus. Not Derek. Me. I had been so careful about that because I'd read too many horror stories about developers getting screwed out of their innovations. I had the time-stamped commits on my personal GitHub, the development logs on my home server, even receipts for the hardware I'd bought. I could prove, beyond any shadow of a doubt, that the Phantom algorithm was mine. You know that feeling when you're so angry you're actually calm? That's where I was. Derek hadn't just stolen my work, he'd stolen my shot at finally getting recognized, at moving up in the company, at proving I was more than just another junior developer who could be pushed around. But I'm not the type to go nuclear without a strategy. If I was going to burn Derek down, I was going to do it right. The timing couldn't have been more perfect. Nexus was hosting its annual Tech Innovation Summit the following month, a big fancy event where we showed off our latest developments to potential clients and investors. 3 days of presentations, demos, and networking, with about 500 attendees including some pretty major players in the finance world. Derek, naturally, was scheduled to give the keynote presentation on the future of AI-driven market analysis. Guess what algorithm he was planning to showcase? Zoe and I spent the next 2 weeks planning. She used her IT access to get me copies of everything, Derek's presentation files, his speaker notes, even his calendar showing how he'd been taking meetings with investors about licensing the algorithm. Meanwhile, I was busy preparing my own little surprise. See, here's something Derek didn't understand about the Phantom algorithm. It wasn't just a piece of code you could copy and paste. The model needed to be constantly retrained with new data to maintain its accuracy. The version I'd given him for the board presentation was basically a static demo. It could show historical results, but it couldn't actually generate new predictions without access to my continuously updated training datasets. Derek assumed that since he had the code, he had everything he needed. He was wrong. The week before the summit, I made Derek an offer he couldn't refuse. "Hey," I said, poking my head into his office with my best innocent smile. "I've been thinking about the keynote. Since I'm so familiar with the technical details of the algorithm, maybe I could help with the demo? You know, handle the back-end stuff while you focus on the business presentation." Derek's face lit up like Christmas morning. He probably thought I'd accepted my place in the corporate food chain and was just happy to be involved. "That's a great idea, Maya. Very team-spirited of you." I was actually a little worried about the technical side of things. Of course he was. Derek could talk a good game about machine learning paradigms and neural network architectures, but ask him to actually run a model and he'd probably try to download more RAM. "Perfect," I said. "I'll set everything up on my laptop and handle all the technical demonstrations. You just focus on selling the vision." We spent the next few days rehearsing. I showed Derek how to advance through the slides, explained which buttons to click for the demo portions, even taught him a few impressive-sounding technical phrases to drop casually during the Q&A. He ate it up. What Derek didn't know was that I was setting up two completely different versions of the presentation. The version on his laptop was the sanitized, company-approved slideshow where he was the brilliant innovator behind the phantom algorithm. But the version on my laptop? That told a very different story. The Nexus Tech Innovation Summit was held at the Seattle Convention Center, and they really went all out. Huge screens, professional lighting, even a red carpet for the VIP attendees. Derek was in his element, working the crowd in his expensive suit, shaking hands with investors and talking about how he was going to transform the landscape of predictive analytics. I spent the morning doing sound checks and making sure all the AV equipment was working properly. The tech crew was great. They let me hook up both laptops to the presentation system so we could seamlessly switch between Derek's slides and my technical demonstrations. The keynote was scheduled for 2 p.m., right after lunch when everyone would be alert and caffeinated. Perfect. Derek took the stage to thunderous applause. He launched into his presentation with the confidence of someone who genuinely believed he deserved to be there. For the first 15 minutes, everything went according to his plan. He talked about market volatility, the limitations of traditional analysis methods, the exciting potential of AI-driven solutions. Standard tech conference stuff. Then he got to the part where he was supposed to introduce the phantom algorithm. "Ladies and gentlemen," Derek said, gesturing grandly at the screen, "I'm proud to present a breakthrough innovation that will revolutionize how we predict market anomalies. I call it the phantom algorithm." The slides changed to show the technical architecture, my diagrams, my code snippets, my performance metrics, all with Derek's name plastered over them. There were appreciative murmurs from the audience. Several people were taking photos. "This isn't just another machine learning model," Derek continued, clearly enjoying himself. "This represents months of cutting-edge research and development. The algorithm can predict market crashes with 94% accuracy by analyzing social media sentiment, news patterns, and trading volumes simultaneously." More applause. I saw several venture capitalists in the front row leaning forward with interest. "Now, I know what you're thinking," Derek said with a practiced smile. "Anyone can show you historical data and claim their model works. But the real test is live prediction. So today, I'm going to demonstrate the phantom algorithm in real time, using current market data to show you exactly how this revolutionary technology works." This was my cue. I was supposed to switch to my laptop and run the demo while Derek provided commentary. Instead, I did something else entirely. I opened my presentation. The first slide that appeared on the massive screen behind Derek wasn't part of his carefully rehearsed presentation. Instead, it was a simple title slide in big, bold letters. "The Phantom Algorithm, The Real Story by Maya Chen, Senior AI Developer." Derek's confident smile faltered. He glanced back at the screen, then at me, then back at the screen. The audience was starting to murmur. Derek said into his microphone, "There seems to be a technical difficulty with the slides. Maya, can you?" But I was already advancing to the next slide, which showed a timeline of the algorithm's development. Every commit, every breakthrough, every late-night debugging session, all time-stamped and documented with my name on them. "Actually, Derek," I said, and my voice carried clearly through the auditorium because Zoe had helped me set up a wireless MAC earlier, "I think the slides are working perfectly." The next slide was a split-screen comparison, Derek's presentation slides on the left, my original documentation on the right. The theft was so blatant, so obvious, that you could hear the collective intake of breath from the audience. Derek was frantically gesturing at the AV booth, probably trying to get them to cut my feed. But Zoe had anticipated that. She'd made sure that only I had control of the presentation system during the technical demonstration portion of the keynote. "You see," I continued, advancing through slide after slide of evidence, "Derek Manning didn't develop the phantom algorithm. He doesn't even understand how it works. He stole it from me, put his name on it, and has been shopping it around to investors for weeks." The audience was dead silent now. Derek had gone pale and was making panicked hand signals toward the back of the auditorium where the Nexus executives were sitting. I could see our CEO, Richard Blackstone, looking absolutely murderous. But I wasn't done yet. "Derek," I said sweetly, "since you're so proud of your algorithm, why don't you explain to everyone how the neural network architecture handles the correlation between sentiment analysis and trading volume predictions?" Derek opened his mouth, closed it, then opened it again. Well, that's a very technical question, Maya. Maybe we should." "Or how about this?" I interrupted, clicking to a slide showing lines of code. Can you walk us through this function that optimizes the training parameters? Since you wrote it and all. Derek was sweating now. The code on the screen might as well have been hieroglyphics to him. You know what, Derek? Let me make this easier for you. Another click, and the screen filled with a simple multiple-choice question. What does ReLU stand for in the context of neural network activation functions? A. Really effective learning unit. B. Rectified linear unit. C. Recursive enhancement logic unit. D. Rapid execution learning utility. It's a basic question, I said. Any AI developer should know this. Hell, anyone who's taken an intro to machine learning course should know this. Derek stared at the screen like it was going to give him the answer through telepathy. The silence stretched on for what felt like hours but was probably only 30 seconds. Finally, he said, Look, I think there's been some kind of misunderstanding here. Oh, there's been a misunderstanding, all right, I said. You understood that you could steal my work and get away with it. You misunderstood how much evidence I kept. The final slide was beautiful in its simplicity, a comparison of file timestamps showing when I'd created the original algorithm versus when Derek had copied it. The dates didn't lie. The metadata didn't lie. The GitHub commits didn't lie. Derek Manning was a fraud, and now 500 people knew it. The rest of the keynote slot turned into the most spectacular corporate meltdown I've ever witnessed. Derek tried to salvage the situation by claiming it was all a collaborative effort and that there had been a miscommunication about attribution. But the evidence was too overwhelming, and the audience wasn't buying it. Several investors got up and walked out. I saw at least 3 people on their phones, probably calling their legal departments. One of the tech journalists in attendance was live tweeting the whole thing with the hashtag #PhantomScandal. Nexus CEO Richard Blackstone took the stage and tried to do damage control, but it was like putting a band-aid on a severed artery. He announced that there would be a full investigation and that the company takes intellectual property theft very seriously. But everyone could see the panic in his eyes. Derek himself just disappeared. One minute he was on stage stumbling through apologies, the next minute he was gone. I found out later that he'd literally run out the back exit of the convention center. The video of the whole thing was online within hours. Someone in the audience had live-streamed it, and by that evening #PhantomScandal was trending on tech Twitter. The 15-minute clip of Derek failing to answer basic AI questions went viral on TikTok. Someone even made a remix of him saying, well, that's a very technical question over a dubstep beat. But the real satisfaction came the next morning, when I got a call from Nexus's head of legal. Turns out, intellectual property theft is a pretty big deal in the tech industry. Who knew? The legal fallout was swift and brutal. Derek was fired within 48 hours, and Nexus faced a potential lawsuit from me for stealing my intellectual property. But here's the thing, I didn't want to destroy the company. Most of my co-workers were good people who had nothing to do with Derek's bullshit. I just wanted what was mine. The settlement negotiation was surprisingly straightforward. Nexus agreed to officially recognize me as the creator and owner of the Phantom algorithm. They paid me a licensing fee that was, let's just say it was enough for me to quit my job and start my own company. They also agreed to provide written references acknowledging my contributions to AI research, which helped when I started applying to graduate programs. Derek, meanwhile, became basically unhireable in the tech industry. The story had spread far enough that a simple Google search of his name brought up articles about the scandal. I heard through the grapevine that he tried to rebrand himself as a business strategy consultant, but most people in Seattle's tech scene knew who he was. The funniest part? About 3 months after I left Nexus, I got an email from their new AI team lead. Turns out, without access to my continuously updated training datasets, Derek's stolen version of the algorithm had degraded to basically useless. They wanted to license the real Phantom algorithm from my new company. I charged them triple the market rate. They paid it. It's been 8 months since #PhantomScandal, and I still get messages from people asking for advice about dealing with credit-stealing bosses. The story resonated with way more people than I expected, which tells you something depressing about how common this kind of thing is in corporate America. The best part of this whole saga? I named my new company Phantom Dynamics, and our logo is a ghost wearing a graduation cap. Every time a potential client asks about the name, I get to tell them the story. It's become my favorite icebreaker. Derek Manning thought he could steal my work and my future. Instead, he gave me the best origin story a tech entrepreneur could ask for. Thanks, Derek. I couldn't have done it without you. Maya Chen is the founder and CEO of Phantom Dynamics, an AI consulting firm specializing in financial prediction algorithms. She holds patents on several machine learning innovations and is currently pursuing a PhD in computer science at the University of Washington. She still thinks Derek Manning is a dick.